Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and I'd like to welcome you all to this rally of the Irish Freedom Party. This is the first of a series of rallies we're organising around the country. Our party was established 2 years ago, based on the principles of freedom, freedom of choice, freedom of movement. And we have a number of speakers to address you here today. We want to talk about the issues of the freedoms that are being impinged by the lockdown and by government action. We also want to talk to you about the carbon tax and about housing. We have a number of speakers. My name is Michael Leahy. I'm the chairman of our party. I'm based in County Clare. We want to offer a legitimate political alternative to the very strong leftward drift in Irish politics. The first speaker I'm going to get here today is Mr. Daithí Ó Fallabháin, who is going to talk to you about the creation of a humane and fair labour policy in this country and humane and fair immigration policy. So, Mr. Daithí Ó Fallabháin, please.
A bigger man than I am. Right, well today I am here to speak about immigration, and I know it's a sensitive subject. Let me be clear, the Irish Freedom Party is not against immigration. My own partner, the love of my life for about 20 years, is a Japanese woman. So let me get that over with right away. But cultures and nations are delicate things and can be easily overwhelmed with bad decision making. To deal with the subject fairly, we need to understand the reality of the numbers and what kinds of immigration we're actually getting in Ireland. And that's what I hope to speak to you about today. However, we do need to be careful about mass migration. And any of you people who have come to Ireland to make this your home, you're welcome. But anybody who's been here for a few years, know things have changed. And not all of that change has been for the better. So, to the topic. Ireland imports and has about 30,000 migrants coming to Ireland every single year. It's this high because the numbers are now at about 645,000. This is about 13% of the population. To get a perspective on what that actually means, that's about 100,000 more people than live in all of Connacht. Sorry, that's 100,000 more than the population of Connacht. To get a different idea of it, it's about the same as about the least 10 populous counties in Ireland. It's about the same as that house. So obviously, having about 300 So what does this mean? Safer housing. For a start, almost half of all migrants in Ireland live in the private rental sector. So obviously having about 325,000 people needing some place to live puts pressure on the rental market. Migrants tend to gravitate to the towns and the big cities. So who are these people? Well, 67% of migrants to Ireland have third-level educations. We have this image that they're coming to take the jobs that the Irish won't do. That's a myth. It's not true. And as they're accepting employment jobs with lucrative salaries, they want nice apartments in Dublin, Cork, Limerick, and Galway. Now other foreigners, that is the big... we can always expect this. But other foreigners, that is big foreign real estate developers, as well as our own domestic builders, have been building thousands upon thousands of apartments, luxury apartments, to suit these well-heeled immigrants. Of course, not all foreigners are in top-end accommodation. Immigrants are also working in less lucrative jobs, in the factories, hospitality, the food industry, etc. And partly as a result, about 35% of Asians and about 40% of black people in this country are in overcrowded accommodation. Now, what would the IFP do about this? Well, our plan is for a 5-year, right, one-time work visa. This will allow lots of people to come in, get the skills they need, send money home for about 5 years, and then it's time to go. And we can bring in more people. So we can actually help more people this way. Right? And it's a win-win. This is done in Japan, it's done in many countries around the world, so it's not strange. Now, beyond normal immigration, we also have people coming here to live. It's kind of crazy. We have people coming here to live that have no right to live here. For example, we have 20 to 25,000 people who simply break our laws and work under the counter. That's more than the population of Tramore, Dungarvan, Dunmore East, Portlaw, and Lismore put together. All the while, they receive state benefits for themselves and their children. The government intends to give 17,000 of them citizenship. This situation is absurd, and we need only apply existing laws regarding employment to end this. But there is no political will to do so. But of course, there are also now about 8,000, and at any given time, there is about 8,000 people who are in our asylum system. Many people are under the impression these are poor souls fleeing persecution. But according to the latest data we have, about 63% of people that apply for asylum fail the test. And now Fine Gael, Fine Gael, and the Green government intends to integrate asylum seekers from day one. In addition to language lessons, legal costs, and medical, and education for themselves and their children, the government intends to give asylum seekers their own private apartments within months of applying.
Is there something wrong with that then?
To secure accommodation,
That sounds great to me.
off you go. Robert O'Gorman has just been given 120 million euro. This is on top of the 260 million budget already planned for 2022. Let me remind you, 63% of these people failed on their initial applications. Now the people turned refugees are a completely different kettle of fish here, right? Those people are cleared before they ever come to Ireland. It's a very different situation. And we have about 9,000 refugees in Ireland, right? Now the only thing I want to say about this is it costs about 12 times more to establish people in Ireland than it would closer to their own homes, right? So for the same money as putting someone here, putting them in a house, education, clothing, food, the whole lot, we could be helping 12 times more people closer to their own homes. 30 million of them are displaced outside their own home countries. 811 million people go to bed hungry every night, and we can't bring them all here. Even if we could, we shouldn't, because it would destroy us. This argument that we should do as much as we possibly can leads us into a sort of a similar situation as at the end of Schindler's List, where you have to account for every euro you spend because you could have helped somebody in Africa. Now, did I really need that pint? How can I holiday in Spain when I know there's a child somewhere in Africa hungry? And you've seen it yourself at the borders of Europe. You see thousands of angry young men with their arms in the air, demanding to be let into Europe. And the next day you look in the paper and all you see is a sad child. Well, we have our own children, and we have a duty to our own children, which we have not adequately met. And it may seem harsh, but we must accept that when the government engages in charity, it's usually done for a political reason. We must acknowledge that there is an ideological and political element of failed asylum seekers being allowed to remain, of bringing refugees here despite the counterproductive cost, or engineering the economy so that our own highly trained youth see no future here, and yet tens of thousands of immigrants come every single year. And we can't blame the people who want to come. That's not the issue. Of course they do. It's a pretty nice country. And I won't pretend I'm only concerned about housing. I hope we all want Ireland to remain Irish. We need to stop thinking of Ireland as merely an economy. After all, it's possible to imagine a situation in which the economy itself could support hundreds of thousands of more immigrants coming. And you might think that's far-fetched, but that's the plan. Referring to the Ireland's 2040 plan, this is exactly what Simon Coveney has advocated, and I quote, "The population of Ireland will certainly grow by an extra 1 million people. Linked to that estimate is that half of that number won't have been born in Ireland. That's another 500,000 people. We already have 645,000. But this is the expectation, and they're not hiding it. Any unbiased person admits that immigration affects everything. It creates resentment by upsetting the economic balance between people. It challenges what can be taught in school, and from what perspective. Immigration even affects what we can consider acceptable to laugh at or say. It changes our politics when those seeking office begin to court and cater to newcomers. Now, diversity is, by name and nature, divisive. So we need to be careful how we handle it. A recent survey concluded that the Irish are one of the most trusting peoples in Europe. We like to believe the best of people. But our leaders need to be wise, and I would suggest more suspicious. and have foresight as to where these decisions are taking us. Sadly, the Irish have been too trusting of our own leaders, who seem to have a greater allegiance to the internationalist ideology than they have to the people that they have been entrusted to serve, us. So finally, let me say this. We cannot say we honor the memory of our ancestors, yet at the same time give away the land in which they are buried. Personally, I do not long to live in the past. Ireland's history is draped in too much sadness. No, but I work for a future more deeply rooted in the passions and the understandings of the people, our people, who have lived in and loved Ireland for millennia. This is our home. This is our home. Gurmala.
I see we have been joined by the successors of the black shirts of Mussolini and Hitler, who try to shout people off the street rather than listen to an alternative viewpoint. If you genuinely believe that your opposition is to Nazism, you should be supporting our right to freedom of speech, sir, and not shouting your inane and foolish slogans. Our next speaker is Mr. Luke O'Connor, who's going to speak to us on the issues of media and the primacy of China in the modern economy.
How are we doing today, guys? It's great to be here talking to the people of Waterford. My name is Luke O'Connor. I have a degree in media and politics from DCU. I'm going to talk to you about three main points today regarding China, the COVID-19 crisis, and our country's relationship with the European Union. So how in God's name has our country been left in this state? We have a health service which is crumbling. A health service which is not fit for purpose. A health service that has had money thrown at it, your money. The Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael government cabal have prioritised lockdowns as a primary means for controlling COVID-19. And this has had an impact on the country's health that the media will never portray. They'll never do. There will be no case numbers on RTE every night which detail how many people suffered due to missed cancer screenings, cancelled operations, a lack of social connection affecting their mental health. These are the forgotten men and people of our country. And we can never stop fighting for them. This COVID-19 reality in which we now exist has led to widespread discrimination of the unvaccinated. The failure of the vaccine rollout to prevent a media-led hysteria over case numbers is diametrically opposed to what Lord Emperor Tony Holohan I said about case numbers, which was that case numbers would cease to become a relevant statistic once the vaccines had been taken. He's gone quiet on that issue now. And he's not being called out by the media. He never will be. They don't do their jobs. I went to school with a lot of them. They're no good. They don't care. The most depressing moment for me over the last 2 years came shortly after the first lockdown began. The Irish Independent, a paper I had always read, and a paper my father read all his life, had a paid advertisement for the Chinese Communist Party's ambassador to Ireland. In this piece of paid propaganda, he absolved the Chinese Communist Party of all their failures regarding COVID-19. At the same time, the ambassador, he blamed the ills of populism. The definition of populism is a group of people standing up for the public, common people, against a group of elites. Those elites who don't care about us. Populism is us meeting in the streets now. It's even our Antifa friends over there meeting. That's populism, okay? And the thing about populism is that nobody in the media wants to talk about how good it is. It's always how we have poisoned discourse. They blame us, they blame me and you. In the aftermath of this, our Foreign Affairs Minister Simon Coveney thanked China for sending us PPE for our healthcare system. Then we found out the PPE didn't work. It never worked. Okay? Along with that, it's not the first time the Chinese have taken advantage of us. They also failed to pay for a Confucius Institute in UCD, which we paid the bill for. While the establishment kneels and posts on social media supporting a Black Lives Matter movement that literally burned cities to the ground, they are conveniently silent on the human rights atrocities committed in China, such as the persecution of Tibetan monks, the genocide of Uyghur Muslims, and the practice of organ harvesting. Our elite's failure to stand up to the CCP is an indictment on the people who are supposed to represent us. In fact, some of our representatives actually want a version of state capitalism with an authoritarian model. This ties in with the Irish mainstream media, whose nauseating level of moral grandstanding is matched only by the wealth of incompetence they've shown since well before COVID-19. The Journal.ie's fact check, for example, have consistently been deemed by the International Fact-Checking Network as non-fact-checking content. Their opinion is in the news. It's not news, it's their opinion. So recently, and I want to give a big thanks to Brit, who have actually uncovered a lot of this stuff. And their opinion is in the news as well. But at least it's documented. They don't portray themselves to be impartial. They're not. That's the way modern news has gone. Most recently, this rubbish was exemplified in the Irish sports media, where the journalists recommend, or they gave out about the lack of diversity in the Irish rugby team, lamenting that too many white Irish kids played for the Irish rugby team. I don't think that's just morally right. I don't think that it's morally wrong. I don't care. Whoever's best suited to a job should get it, regardless of race, gender, sexual preference, or ethnicity. Finally, I just want to thank everyone for coming out today. You guys, every day of the week, you guys turn out. It shows all our detractors what we're really about. I would rather have the first 15 people who turn up to one of these rallies governing the country than the 15 in cabinet at the moment. So thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Our next speaker is the chairman of the IRP coming for Waterford City and the vice chairman of the Irish Freedom Party. He's a person that will be known to you. He's a wonderful speaker, Mr. Aaron Joyce, and he will be running for election, I can assure you, at the next election. Thank you, Aaron.
Good afternoon, everybody. Indeed, my name is Aaron Joyce, and I'm very proud to be the vice chairman of the Irish Freedom Party and the chairman of the Women here in Waterford. I am from Dungarvan, County Waterford, and I just want to speak to you today about the two big F words that I like to talk about. Not the one you think, fisheries and freedom, okay? Fisheries and freedom. I want to note as well, our president of the Irish Freedom Party sends his apologies, he can't be with us, Herman Kelly, a very passionate man about fishing as well, and he combined his speech, and I want to share with you in and around fisheries, and I'll speak to you briefly on freedom. Once again, I want to reiterate Luke's point to thank everybody for staying and listening to us. It is a very cold day. Ireland has the most fertile fishing waters in Europe, with huge potential for creating vast wealth and jobs for the communities which inhabit our beautiful coastal towns. Yet, as it stands, a maximum of 18,000 people in Ireland are employed in occupations reliant on the fishing sector. Under the EU Common Fisheries Policy, Irish fishermen are entitled to only 15% of the catch in our own national marine territory. EU trawlers, on the other hand, are entitled to 85% of their catch. They are effectively allowed to plunder our fishing waters at will. These fishing quotas for Irish waters are decided in Brussels by unelected and unaccountable bureaucrats. Successive Irish governments have refused to stand up for our fishing industry and protect our natural resources. 80 boats and their attendant fishermen went to Dublin port in June looking for a better deal for their families and for their coastal communities. I see them still waiting. They did a great job making a case to the public and to listening TDs that they need a better deal. Their arguments are irrefutable. However, the sad thing is their urging of the government will not make any difference. Why? Because the Irish Minister for Agriculture, Food and Marine has no power when it comes to the quotas which derive from the EU's common fisheries policy. Ireland has 1% of the EU population and 1% of the vote at the Council of Ministers which deals with fisheries. While a member of the EU, Ireland will be outvoted time after time because other bigger, more powerful countries like Spain and France etc. want as much fish out of our waters as they can possibly get. They will never voluntarily agree to take a massive cut in their fishing quotas, so it can be handed back to the Irish fishermen. The Minister for Marine in EU terms is the monkey, while the European Commission and the European Council is the organ grinder which plays the tune. The Irish government has no power over the size of quota for Irish fishing boats because it's decided and dished out at an EU level. To give an example, Ireland has an extremely lucrative bluefin tuna fisheries, but Irish boats are not allowed to catch them. The EU share of the global bluefin quota is 19,360 tonnes. That was in 2020. The Irish government haven't even asked, never mind secured a single tonne of this for the Irish fishing fleet. We have had no history of fishing for tuna in this agreement. Yes, well, the bluefin have only entered Irish waters in recent decades, but the refusal to even ask for bluefin tuna demonstrates a terrible failure of vision and will. The only way Irish coastal communities will ensure that Irish boats have exclusive access to our territorial waters is to leave the EU and get out from under the massive milestone that is the common fisheries policy. Some politicians like Sinn Féin's Padraig McLaughlin wish to lay blame at the feet of the British fishermen, whose quota for their own seas will increase to 75% within 5 years, with conjoined loss to Irish boats. To be fair, Ireland again got shafted in the Brexit carve-up with the French, coming off best as usual, but he missed the root. He missed the root cause of Ireland's fishing demise, that being our EU membership, which has handed our waters on a plate to be carved up by those in Brussels. Outside the EU, Irish fishermen could have 100% of all the fish caught in Irish waters. As it is, as our fishing boats are tied up in Dublin, EU super trawlers from the Netherlands, France and Spain are hoovering up what they can find around our coasts. The common fisheries policy is not just an economic disaster for Ireland, but also an ecological one, because it's a perfect illustration of the tragedy of the commons. When no one has ownership and responsibility, so best to bog the arm in now as much as possible. Alternatively, an independent country like Iceland can plan and strictly monitor catches to ensure the long-term ecological health of its waters. Few people realise that when our seabed territory is taken into account, Ireland is one of the largest countries in Europe. The real map of Ireland clearly depicts the full extent of Ireland's marine territory of over 220 million acres. That is 880,000 kilometres squared, which is 10 times the size of the island of Ireland. Under a recent EU ruling, Irish fishermen have been singled out in the most unfair and disproportionate ways. They have been ordered to weigh their catch at the harbour, while French and Spanish boats are treated differently. According to Dr. Karen Devine of DCU, using Eurostat, EU trawlers have taken 215 billion euros worth of fish out of national waters up to 2016. Just think of the jobs and families that type of money could have supported around the coast of this country, around the coast of this island. our country. Ireland is a country wealthy in resources. If only Norwegian companies did not suction up the benefit of our oil reserves and EU boats did not plunder 85% of the fish in our very own territorial waters. When will the Irish politicians in Dáil Éireann, dripping with hypernophobia, realise that Ireland is not a quarry which the EU and global cooperation can dig out to build a new global order? We are a nation and our people should come first. The Irish people should be housed first. Irish fishermen should get as much access to Irish waters as they can handle. Our oil and gas resources should be for the benefit of the Irish people. The European Union has treated Ireland extremely badly in recent years. They imposed 64 billion euros of bank debt onto the Irish taxpayer in 2011, plus emptied our pension reserves fund of over 20 billion euros. It meant Ireland paid 42% of the total cost of the European banking crisis, despite having only 1% of the EU population. The EU Recovery Fund agreed last year means Ireland will be putting in 18.7 billion and only getting back less than 1 billion. Sounds very fair to me, guys, does it to you? In loans and grants, that is. EU membership now means we pay 1.5 billion euros as a net annual payment for a political club which imposes many harmful laws on us and is and has destroyed our national sovereignty. Fisheries, guys, is massive to us in the county of Waterford, as you're well aware. Dunmore, Passage, closer to home for me, and on Ryan, Dungarvan. Fisheries in Youghal, County Cork, I've had chats with Paddy, diminished over the years. Cork, we can go on. We could speak for the day. It's a great, great reference to make in the speech. 880,000 kilometres squared. That is some size in comparison to the island of Ireland. That is the fishing waters that we can access. Guys, the freedom of speech is something that has been absolutely torn apart, challenged over the last 24 months. It's something I want to speak to you briefly about. Luke touched on it in his speech, the media. I personally have spoken to about 35 media outlets, submitting paperwork from the Irish Freedom Party and indeed papers of my own that are rejected from the media. This is going on with many organisations up and down the country. Many alternative viewpoints are not getting out there. I'm sure you're aware of 93,500 euros being paid to WLR. I'm sure you're aware of that, B102, 103 and all local media outlets. That figure gets higher as the media outlets get bigger. Check my information online. I ask parents that are listening to me today to take note of the mandates, rules and regulations enforced by government. And please stand up for the future of your own children's futures, Please stand up for them. Please voice your opinions. We, as people, are a very, very, very proud people. We have a very strong voice. Please use it. Please stand up for the future of this country. And please voice your opinion, whether it is the same as mine, whether it's the same as our friends over. Everyone in this country has a voice, and they should be proud to use it. Got a meal, Margaret, on a Waterford for everyone for coming out today. Thank you very much for listening.
We have one more local speaker, Mr. Paddy Bullman, if he's here.
Good day. As you said, I was local. I'm fairly local. I'm just outside the border to the Dish. I'm from Youghal, County Cork. What I wanted to say a few words on right and wrong. And when I say right, I mean rights, our rights. When I was born here 65 years ago in this country, we weren't part of the EU. We were a family of 6 people, and my parents, my mother was a housewife, my father was a baker, and they brought up a family on one wage. You try that today. 100 years ago, a little over that, Ireland became Ireland. People, our ancestry, fought for these rights that I want to talk about. They paid for them in blood, so that I can stand here today and speak freely, express my opinion, knowing I have the right to do so. I can travel around my own land, wherever and whenever I want. For the last 100 years, we, the people of Ireland, have had very little say in the running of our country. Our country was run by two major parties. Tweedledum and Tweedledee took turns in ruling over the people of Ireland. Today, we have exchanged, we fought off 100 years ago an oppressive regime to replace it with a domestic oppressive regime, or so-called government. In the last 2 years, this government, and from now on I will not call it a government, it is a tyranny. For the last 2 years, this tyranny have torn apart, trampled on, and done their best to take away the rights of my country, my countrymen, the right to speak, to assemble. They have taken away these rights and they continue to do so. It is not a virus that has locked you in your homes at regular intervals. It is not a virus that is making you, forcing you to wear a mask. It is not a virus that has stopped you meeting your mother in a nursing home, or trying to go for a pint, or trying to get into a restaurant to have a cup of coffee without showing some kind of a bloody pass. A pass that shows you're one of the clean. You do not belong to the unclean, the unvaccinated, the ones that are spreading disease left, right and centre. It is not a virus that has done this and taken away your rights. It is the tyranny that has done so and continue to do so. We, the people of Ireland, have a lot in common with each other. We have our history in common, a good and glorious history we have in common. But we have been divided by this tyranny. It has, according to their own figures, the majority of the people of this island practicing segregation and apartheid, and they think that's okay. They brand people like me as being troublemakers and not having the right morals, that I'm an immoral person for my views and what I do. Well, I do not partake in segregation or apartheid, and if that is bad morals, then I'm bad. Now, we are where we are today, and we have this common tyranny over us. I regard them as a common enemy. It is a common enemy of the people. This government is without doubt the enemy of the people of Ireland. And what are we going to do about it? What we will do about it is we will remove them. We will replace them. We will replace them with a government of our choosing. And we have the right to do so, according to the very first article in the Constitution of this country. That Constitution clearly states that we, the people, decide our own destiny in our own country, and we decide our own form of government. This is not our government anymore. This is our oppressor, our tyranny, and we will use this. This little blue book is our constitution, and it holds all my rights. And if this tyranny are intent on taking it away, I say to you, don't let it happen. Stand up for your rights, for your right to walk around this country freely, to engage with your friends freely, to speak your mind freely, to have your opinion. That we have been coerced into everything that has been done in the last 2 years. Yet they tell us it is our choice. It is my choice not to be vaccinated. Yet I'm treated like a leper for it. I believe in choice. If you want to get vaccinated, knock yourself out. But if I don't, I won't. And that is my right. And I will defend that right. Don't forget all that has happened in our history. We've had tyrannical regimes telling us what to do. And after 100 years, we're back there again. Except this time, it's our own countrymen above and down Erin that are perpetrating these wrongs on people. It is time we changed it. We will change it at the polls next time. They almost lost it the last time. We'll get them the next time. Their history. The people of Ireland will rule in Ireland and nobody else. No jumped up ministers. We rule our country. End of. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Paddy, a great local speaker. I will be the last speaker this evening. And thank you very much for staying out in this cold weather. I believe the council are a bit concerned about the loudness of our volume, but we'll see if we can do something about that. Anyway, my name is Michael Leahy. I'm the chairman of the Irish Freedom Party. We're a party which was established approximately 2 years ago, and our main interest is in freedom. Freedom of choice, and freedom of assembly, and freedom of expression. I want to address 3 issues today: freedom, energy and the carbon tax. Our party is organised around the principles of freedom of choice, and not very long ago those principles would not have needed to be said and would have been accepted by every political party. Today, sadly, that is no longer the case. Our parties in the Dáil are united in proposing to restrict our rights of free speech and free assembly. They are united in proposing to limit our economic freedom and our ability to acquire housing on the basis of what is essentially a communist ideology masquerading as concern for the climate. They are at present engaged in introducing ever more restrictions on our freedom of actions and freedom of association, without any coherent scientific justification of the basis of fighting what they wrongly claim is a serious health emergency. Before I address that issue, let me make one thing clear at the outset. The Irish Freedom Party is a political party and not a medical association. We do not give advice to anyone on whether or not to take a vaccine. People can do the research in that matter and come to their own conclusions. However, what we absolutely insist upon is that there can be no coercion of people to take any medical procedure that they're not happy with. That is a basic principle of justice, of fairness and of proper civil government. The principle known as the Nuremberg Code, which prevents forcing people to take medical interventions against their will, is now coming under attack in European Union countries such as Austria, and it is clear from the effective coercion against those who do not wish to take the vaccine that we are not far behind. The Nuremberg Code was incorporated into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the wake of the medical atrocities carried out during the Second World War. Have we really forgotten the appalling activities that governments carried out during that time? Have we forgotten the lesson of the Nazi era within living memory, that the first step in any tyranny is to corrupt the medical profession? There is a real danger of such a thing as medical tyranny. We all know our doctors are genuinely committed and dedicated people. There is, however, a tendency within that profession to assume that it has the right to dictate the actions of others. When any profession takes that position, it has gone too far, and it then becomes a tool of tyrants and a tool of unscrupulous government. It is time for us to say to government and to the medical establishment that we will not stand by and let you impose an apartheid system against any of our citizens. Because when one group is diminished and demeaned, all of us are diminished and demeaned. We will not let your panicked reaction drag us back to the days of a latter-day Nazi-style tyranny. There can be no doubt that over the past 2 years, the provisions of the Irish Constitution have been turned on their head. Our Constitution states that the only circumstance in which our freedoms can be suspended is in time of war or in times of specific civil strife involving violent affray. None of these circumstances prevail at present, but there is no doubt that our most basic freedoms have been consistently attacked, including our rights of movement, our right to conduct business, our rights of free assembly, and even, with the complicity of our state-run media, our right to freedom of speech. Dissenting voices, including those of medical doctors, have been ruthlessly censored, and they have been attacked in their jobs and even, sadly, in their homes. We must fight to our dying breath against the woke elites who would attack and destroy the dissenting voice. To say that what is happening is unjustified is a complete misunderstatement. Our government and civil service have been completely panicked. They have embarked on a campaign of civil repression out of all proportion to the difficulties which they face. And now, coming up to Christmas, what do we see? Ooh! The new virus, all the way from South Africa. I wonder what that's going to bring us, and I wonder what kind of repression it is going to be used to justify it. This is only going in one direction, and that is the creation of an anti-democratic totalitarian state which can only be sustained by keeping the population in a state of ignorance and fear. There is some good news in that regard, and that is that the Supreme Court action taken by John Waters and Gemma O'Doherty is going to be held in the new year, and I have a feeling it's going to give a fairly severe slap on the wrist against some of the actions that have been taken. It is time we said we will not be governed by fear or by negative thinking. We will be governed by hope for the future and respect for our God-given rights. For a long time before the present health situation became our main focus, it appeared to me that the so-called climate crisis was going to be used as a justification for attacking freedom, for seizure of property, and for the imposition of tyranny. The so-called green agenda and climate change measures recently announced will, as always, hit the poorest people in our society the hardest. It will have the effect of making it impossible for rural people to survive economically, and very often even to heat their homes. The requirement to upgrade often perfectly sound buildings at enormous cost will render those buildings worthless from a property point of view, and effectively amounts to the seizure of property. Often elderly people will be forced to undertake massive borrowing in order to effect a minimal heat saving, and they will be forced into the tender mercies of the banking system, which will inevitably lead to many of them seeing their properties being taken from them. In case you think I'm exaggerating, look at the language of governments and the international bodies. When they talk about the Great Reset, you think they're joking? When they tell us that we will own nothing and we will be happy, they're not simply playing with words or slogans, they mean it. Well, I've got news for them. If they want to turn the Irish people into a bunch of landless serfs, they're going to have a fight on their hands like they've never seen before. Waterford is primarily a rural county. The Green agenda will have a massive impact on farming, and indeed it is the stated policy of the Green Party to reduce agricultural output, to reduce the herd number, and to reduce the consumption of meat. The day will come, as in the famine, when Irish people will be forced to export their beef to China, while they will be encouraged to eat lower protein foods, including, if the Green Party is to be believed, insects and rodents. One thing we have to remember as rural people when it comes to the carbon tax is that we are far more car dependent than those in urban areas. We should bear in mind that 57 cents of every euro we put into our cars in petrol goes not to the manufacturer or to the shopkeeper, but to the government in taxes. an increasing amount of that going to carbon taxes, which are only going to go up, and which are an unnecessary and pointless exercise which will do nothing in the long term to change the climate, but is simply a matter of government virtue signalling. Another extraordinary example of the foolishness of government climate policy is the closure of the peat stations in Ireland, while we import peat from abroad. I could also mention, coming from County Clare, the closure of the Money Point station because it burns coal, at the same time as China is building a new coal-fired station every 3 days. Do we really think that's going to help our climate? Well, I can tell you what it will do. It will cause blackouts in our electricity grid in the near future. And by the way, the people who have been let go from Money Point are now having to be brought back to keep that station in operation, because the ESB realises that if they don't, we will be facing blackouts, and facing them soon. The carbon tax is wrong. It will achieve nothing in terms of environmental safety, and it will target the weakest and the poorest in our society. We must say to government that this madness has to stop now, and it can be stopped by rejecting the carbon tax and by rejecting the green agenda. The most immediate problem we face in Ireland is that of housing, and again the problem is in large measure created by the government's own policies. Unless we develop a politics where people matter, we will not solve the problem. It is essential that young people are able to afford home ownership, because without that security they will never develop independence to start a family. And if we do not develop strong families, our nation has no future. There are several steps the government can take. The first most obvious one is to take VAT off new houses for first-time buyers. Can anyone tell me why a tax that was introduced as a luxury tax is now the single most expensive item that any young family must face when they try to put a roof over their heads? It has been estimated that over 34% of the cost of new houses is caused by government tax. Okay, all right, we'll turn it off. Okay. I'm sorry, I have to turn off the speaker. Okay, I will. Okay, we're going to turn it off.
That's how bad it is.
I will try to speak to you now, but my voice isn't very strong, but I keep going. I'm near the end of my speech anyway. Sorry? Okay, if you put something close.
Oh my God. Against this town.
The council has taken an injunction against stop us. Okay, guys, let's do this.
Waterford Council, without an house, the homeless.
Absolutely unreal.
So the
The greatest difficulties in individuals face in trying to build houses in their own areas is that planning policy is often unnecessarily restrictive. Furthermore, our planning policy has become drastically confused with environmental policy.
There goes your freedom of speech there.
Banks can delay legitimate development and cause an unnecessary increase in the cost of housing. We must take away the rights of
They know they're doing wrong. You can see it in their faces. They know they're doing wrong.
To build houses in their areas. It is intolerable that a leftist political lobby group like Untashta can be allowed to have such a negative impact on rural Ireland. Our party will take them on, and we will chase them back to Dublin 4 where they belong. Ireland is the only country in the world which allows third-party planning appeals to people who have no financial or other interest. We must bring this process to an end, particularly as far as rural housing is concerned. We believe that intergenerational mortgages is one of the keys to solving our housing problem. We believe in the development of a new community-based banking system using the credit union system as a branch network, and we believe in the use of the German-style local credit system and taking power and credit control away from the larger banks. We need to develop a banking system which works for the benefit of the people and not for the benefit of the banks.
They don't want you to hear this. They don't want you to hear it.
Okay, it's a bit difficult to speak as but I'll bring the speech to an end. The Irish Freedom Party has been established with a view to addressing the issues which face our people at a time when freedom is under increasing attack. And I'm not just talking about the events of the last 18 months to 2 years. It is clear to me that our society has been run for the benefits, is not being run for the benefit of the people. It is clear to me that the aims of government are to facilitate multinational business and the interests of the European Union. We must, however, realise that freedom is not an added extra. Without freedom of expression, of worship, of assembly, of property ownership, of privacy within the individual and the family, of access to resources, no stable society can function properly for the benefit of its citizens.
I suppose Russell
But the good
Dalton is not
news is
different.
that there's something you can do about
He's up now.
it. You can join the Irish Freedom Party. We are the only party which will make a meaningful fight for Ireland's independence and Ireland's liberty. I would ask you to make contact with this party, contact your local common leader, Aaron. We need all the help we can get.
I had no idea.
In many of the things I have said, I have accused the government and the establishment of acting in bad faith and of pursuing policies which are destructive. The problem is that the main opposition party, Sinn Féin, gets in power, things will be even worse. What we have to realise is that there are many people in our parties and in the international organisations to which they are affiliated who want to see chaos developing, because that is the only way they will get their great reset and their new normal into operation. If you think that the people who are committed to the creation of a new world order would care less for the welfare and the benefits of the ordinary Irish people, then you're very much mistaken. However, I do see signs of an awakening, and I have a funny feeling that those people who seek to betray our democracy may soon get a lesson from the people that they will not forget. Let us build together a new Ireland based on the values of freedom and liberty, which are the foundation of our nation. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry we'll have to fight with folks.
Free speech. They don't want you. They don't want you to hear that. They don't want free speech. They're afraid of free speech. The authorities are shutting down free speech in this country.